It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
So there's the traditional start and end to the space race, which is the launch of Sputnik 1, the very first satellite in orbit around the Earth, and that was October 4th, 1957. The end, slightly debatable. A lot of people look at the moon landing, the first moon landing, which happened 20th of July, 1969. But if you flash forward a few more years after all of the Apollo landings happened, there was an Apollo-Soyuz test project where the US and the Soviet Union linked up their spacecraft for the first time, and they had a symbolic handshake as the end of the space race, and that was in 1975. The space race really dates back to the end of World War II. There's a power vacuum after Germany collapsed, and both the US and the Soviet Union are vying to be the next superpower. And space and the rockets that were developed in World War II were very much the frontier. And if you could demonstrate that you had technological superiority, that was the frontier. So space was the frontier. Can we get into space? Can we explore it? Can it be used for military purposes? So you kickstart this arms race, and both the US and the Soviet Union are going into Germany and grabbing any of the technology they could get their hands on and any of the engineers and bringing them back to their own country. There was rapid technology advancement in terms of the rockets, and then the Soviet Union launches Sputnik 1 in 1957. That sparked a huge amount of fear, particularly in the US, because suddenly you had this satellite flying overhead in the US that people could look up and see and track. And that was really people were very afraid because they suddenly felt like the Soviet Union had the power to drop potentially nuclear bombs on US soil. So this kick-started the space race. Space is expensive. It costs a lot of money to launch something. There was a huge advance in technology and a lot of research and engineers that had to work behind the scenes on that. So it was only the biggest, wealthiest countries at the time that could compete. At the end of World War II, the three countries that were in the running were the US, the Soviet Union, and Britain, actually. And Britain also got some of the engineers and the technology out of Germany, but didn't have quite the same economy, couldn't quite afford the same program. They did start on a rocket program and then canceled it. So you're left with just the US and the Soviet Union as these powers that are vying to be superpowers and wanting to prove their dominance in space. In terms of people involved in Apollo 11, that's a huge question because you want to think about all of the people behind the scenes. So Apollo 11, of course, you have the three astronauts. You have Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. And they were the ones that actually went to the moon. Michael Collins sometimes is forgotten about because he was left in orbit. But they are the tip of the iceberg, and the Apollo 11 mission would not have been possible without the flight directors and mission control, the Capcom that talked to the astronauts during the mission, all of the engineers that were monitoring all of the signals, the doctors, the trainers, people like Margaret Hamilton, who wrote the code, the software code for the Apollo spaceship. So you're talking about thousands of people across the US, including a lot of international support as well to make it happen.